Just to advise, we're now live on YouTube.
Good evening, everybody. Unfortunately, it looks like the Reverend Stork Banks is having technical problems and is not in with us. So my apologies for that. So we'll start our meeting, unfortunately, without prayers this evening. Good evening. I'd like to welcome members, officers and any members of the public viewing at home to this evening's council meeting. Miss Willis, may I please have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've received apologies from Councillor Ben Lee.
Thank you. Moving to agenda item 2, I propose that the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 14th of October and the extraordinary meetings of the 4th of November 2020 be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second that motion.
Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Item number 3, my announcements. Whilst we are still living in a virtual world and attend meetings by Zoom, I have had the opportunity and been invited to turn on a couple of Christmas tree lights in the villages, shared mulled wine and mince pies, and drawn the raffle for the Windlesham Luncheon Club, all at social distancing. While standing in the rain and the dark on a sun corner, it made me think of Christmas past when the area would be filled with fun and laughter. It made me thankful for technology, as this enables so many people to have contact with friends and loved ones, both far and near, in these dark times. When the lights came on and brightened the area, it made me think of hope. Hope for the future, hope for next Christmas, when we will all be able to gather again with friends and families enjoying the festive spirit. So thank you for all those who put up their Christmas decorations early to brighten our streets. Thank you to all those councillors and wonderful volunteers who have once again stepped up and are offering to supply a Christmas lunch on a plate to all those who will be alone on Christmas Day. Not forgetting, of course, our own meals at home who deliver all the year round, not just Christmas Day. To all those that are working over the Christmas period in numerous different professions and capacities, and to everyone who either lives or works in the borough, and to the officers and staff of Surrey Heath, thank you. So it just remains me to say I would like to wish a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year to all the residents of the borough. Item 4, I'd like to invite the leader to make his announcements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This being the final council meeting of 2020, I'd like to talk about just a few of the things we've achieved this year. When we all stood for election in 2019, none of us knew that within a year our residents would come under siege, and it would be up to us to ensure services continued as normal and coped with what the new circumstances threw at us. This council supported a massive volunteer army which sprang up overnight to deliver groceries, medicines, services and friendship. Politics, quite rightly, had no part to play, and Surrey Heath was lauded as the gold standard for how it should be done. In conjunction with that, our officers regularly contacted thousands of our most vulnerable residents to check on them, but we also distributed thousands of payments and grants to businesses and charities across the borough. But while most of this year has been focused on fighting the effects of the crisis, we continued to give planning consents, delivered 20% more meals at home, collected 30% more rubbish from our doorsteps, much of which gets recycled, keeping us in the top 3 in the country, managed a massive regeneration of Camberley High Street, and delivered all the other vital services our residents rely on. And we did all this while we and our officers experienced a radical change in working practices. On top of all that, at our previous full council meeting in October, I stated I had been working with Mr. Passion on our potential responses to the expected economic fallout from the COVID crisis. With unemployment comes increased financial problems, debt, financial poverty, food poverty, particularly with children, domestic abuse and homelessness. I was sure everyone would agree these are the issues the council needs to be focusing on, and I promised to do my best to ensure we provided as much support as we could to those residents who need us. Well, I'm pleased to confirm that since October, the executive has been making sure we delivered on that promise. Councillor Josephine Hawkins has ensured we've taken a number of actions to help tackle the effects of poverty and hardship in our community. In addition to the numerous grants we already had budgeted, we transferred £40,000 between the two food banks covering Surrey Heath, opened the Surrey Heath Lottery Grant Scheme to applications, created a ward councillor community fund where borough councillors have a small but significant fund to make local micro grants. We radically restructured our community infrastructure levy into a local community fund where community groups can apply for major grants and work with the council to improve their local area. We're just about to complete on a house that will be adapted to provide emergency short stay accommodation for those Surrey Heath residents forced into sleeping rough, and we're working with the Hope Hub to provide more long-term solutions. Last month, this chamber stepped in to fill a gap and allocated £20,000 to provide meals for children entitled to free school meals during school holidays. But now that positive action has been taken by the government, I hope we vote this evening to turn that £20,000 into a grant scheme available for charities and community groups tackling general food poverty. We formed a small non-political working group dedicated to alleviating the effects of poverty, which uniquely includes charities, churches and social services. This group is continuing to identify the best ways we can provide support, initially in the hardest hit wards and then across the whole borough. Councillor Duggan has led on introducing pro-business and employment programmes. Again, since only October, we repurposed a major business support fund to provide training for people who want to start up their own business, mentoring for people who have their own business but are looking for advice on either how to recover or grow, business health checks and support for established local businesses, support for 16 to 24-year-olds to get a 6-month paid job placement with a local employer, and still retained a sum of money for retailers to improve their shop fronts on our high streets. While our priorities are quite rightly on providing support to the most vulnerable in our community and putting in place the programmes needed to get our businesses back up and running as quickly as possible, we've continued to deliver and in fact improve our service delivery. Two prominent examples of this are within our enforcement and community services. Councillor Page has led on strengthening our corporate and planning enforcement services. This chamber allocated approximately £200,000 towards future legal fees, which unfortunately will be necessary when fighting for what's right for our residents. This complements the 2 new enforcement officers that recently joined the team. The council has long been committed to partnership working because, frankly, it delivers service improvements while simultaneously reducing costs. Once again, we committed to partnership working when Councillor Mansfield led on our signing an agreement with Runnymede Borough Council for the shared delivery of community services to vulnerable people across both boroughs who want to continue to live independently in their homes and remain active in the community. This partnership is groundbreaking and is expected to generate an additional income and cost savings of around £140,000 in the first year. That 140k will be factored into our budget priorities for the coming year by Councillor Lewis, who is heading up the team, looking at how we make up the projected shortfall in income without cutting services. As difficult as that is, I'm sure we were all pleased to see Surrey Heath Borough Council ranked #1 in the country for financial strength by global accountancy firm Grant Thornton recently. One of the services we're looking to protect, and if we can improve even further next year, is in the provision and maintenance of our green spaces. Councillor Jennings-Evans has led on our refurbishing and building some fantastic play parks across the borough, as well as introducing brand new security measures in vulnerable spaces. Any number of studies show these are vital amenities for our community. There isn't time, or I would imagine the patience of the members, to mention our many other achievements. So I'd just like to say thank you to my fellow group leaders and every member of this council for your passion, your dedication and your hard work. I'd particularly like to say thank you and well done to the executive and of course to all of our officers, not only for these recent achievements, but for all your hard work and commitment over 2020. And I look forward to what we will achieve together in 2021. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Item 5, declaration of interest. Do any members have any declarable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest to declare in relation to the matters which are to be discussed at this meeting? No, thank you. Item 6. I'm advised that 5 questions have been received from members of the public under Council Procedure Rule 10. There will now be a short pause whilst we let members of the public asking questions into the meeting. Welcome to the members of the public who have joined this meeting. I will be taking these questions in order in which they were received. Question 1. Mr. Wilson, would you like to read out your first question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fly tipping is disfiguring our environments and endangering wildlife around Windlesham, Chobham and Bagshot. The council's contractor has to clear up fly tipped waste, and the council itself brings fly tippers to justice. Since the start of 2019, how many instances of fly tipping have occurred in Surrey Heath, and how many successful prosecutions has the council conducted? Thank you.
Thank you. I am advised that the Environment and Health Portfolio holder will respond to this question.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your question, your excellent questions. I have to say, I also live in the local villages, and I know this is a plague on us all. There have been 943 incidences reported to our waste contractor since January 2019. These range from a small sack of refuse to a tipper load of waste. And I'm sure you've witnessed many of those, as indeed I have. The vast majority of instances have been non-recyclable refuse dumped at our small community recycling sites. The council takes all complaints of fly tipping very seriously. When the team attend a fly tip, they check for evidence of where the waste originated from. If evidence is found, the full fly tip and evidence will be photographed and the evidence bagged. This will then be sent to our corporate enforcement team. There have been 2 successful prosecutions with 1 pending. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Mr. Wilson, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor, for your answer. I really appreciated it as well. There is never an excuse for fly tipping. However, if the Bagshot Community Recycling Centre returned to normal opening times and went back to accepting a wider range of waste, do you think it would reduce fly tipping in Bagshot, Windlesham and Chobham? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your supplementary question. I think you probably know my views on the actual opening situation and the changes to some of and the variances to the type of waste that is taken at that particular site. That is at the moment currently under review, and I hope that things will change. It's something I certainly support, as indeed, as also on the County Council, I'm the chairman of the Waste Committee Group. So I am looking for some change as regards that particular circumstance and the items that can be delivered to that particular site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mansfield, and thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your question. Question 2, Dr. Kang, would you like to read out your question?
Hi. The question is, now that the consultation for enhancing security at Heatherside Recreation Ground has been completed, what will happen next to progress this quickly? When will a final decision on the design of prevention measures happen, and will a planning application be required? When can residents expect work to start?
Thank you. I'm advised that the Places and Strategy portfolio holder will respond to this question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Khan, for your question. As this work will require planning consent, we are in the process of drafting the application for submission, which will include detailed drawings. It is envisaged that, subject to approval, work will begin early next year and be completed by spring 2021. The next 2 sites earmarked for additional security are Frimley Green and The Grove, and we are just about to begin consultation with the local community in each area. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Rebecca. First of all, again, can you please get my name correct? It's Dr. Kang. I get confused with Dr. Khan, but please make an effort, please. Dr. Kang, K-A-N-G. Supplementary question. Has thoughts gone into further proactive prevention measures that might be required once security at Heatherside Recreation Ground has been enhanced? Green spaces like Charlesmore Park might then find themselves at risk. It has a similar entrance to somewhere you know well, Lightwater Recreation Ground, which recently had the same issue with travellers due to a lack of forward planning.
Well, Lightwater Recreation Ground, Dr. Kang, is owned by the Windlesham Parish Council and not by this council. I can tell you that we have looked at over 90 sites throughout the borough to ensure that we are forward planning, and we have a rolling programme of sites that we are looking at on a most vulnerable basis. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings-Evans, and thank you, Dr. Kang, for your question. Question 3, Mrs. Noble, would you like to read out your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. What provision is Surrey Heath Borough Council putting in place to ensure that all children receive free school meals or equivalent during the school holidays?
I'm advised that the Support and Safeguarding portfolio holder will respond to this question.
Good evening. Thank you for the question. I hope you can hear me okay. I seem to be having bandwidth and everything else widths at the moment, problems. The council has been working with Surrey County Council as a government provided them with a new £170 million COVID winter grant scheme to support children, families and the most vulnerable residents over winter. The majority of the funding is intended to ensure children do not go hungry during the winter months. Surrey County Council, in discussion with early years, schools and partners, has agreed to use the funding to provide all families with children eligible for benefit-related free school meals with the supermarket food vouchers during the winter months. I've missed the line, sorry. All school vouchers over the Christmas holiday period. The vouchers cover the period of 2 weeks from Monday 21st December to 4th of January 2021 and will be £15 per week per child. Surrey County Council also intend to offer vouchers to cover the February half-term and Easter holidays in 2021. Over the last few weeks, Surrey County Council have been liaising with WAND, the Management Information System Data Integration Specialist, as a title to get to Tongram, who has successfully launched a free school meal voucher platform. WAND worked with Surrey County Council and partners to develop a system that means they can extend the usual school offer to children who are in receipt of funded early education for 2-year-olds and early years pupil premium. To further support this, the Borough Council have worked with local partners such as Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, the Hope Hub, local community organisations and others to publicise a telephone number for people to contact if they need help. This information can be found on the council's website I won't tell you what they are, but it is on the website. It's the Citizens Advice Surrey Heath or Surrey Heath Borough Council, but they're on the website. I hope that's of help.
Thank you very much for that full reply.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Mrs Noble, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
I would please, thank you, Madam Mayor. As not all councillors are aware, BESM doesn't cover the outlying villages in Surrey Heath. The councillors and staff have very kindly put together hampers for distribution via BESM, but what plans are in place to ensure that the residents of Bisley, West End and Chobham receive the same entitlement as their neighbours in the rest of the borough, please?
I believe that the BESMs do have a lot of support, and also I can't remember what the name of the other organisation is. Mrs Livingston, I believe you're on this call, and tell me what the other organisation is that we do support, so the outlying villages do get help.
It's not the Woking. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wheeler. I was going to say, if you like, I can answer this. Yes, so
Yes,
it's the Woking Food Bank who have received additional funding in order to support the villages. It was the first time this year that that's been included in our plan, and it's to make sure that we are engaged, and also we are in direct contact with Woking Food Bank should anybody need any additional support.
Thank you very much, Councillor
Thank you,
Wheeler and Councillor Hawkins.
As you can see, that we're all working together to help the needy. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins, and thank you, Mrs Noble. Question 4. I'd like to invite Richard Payne to read out the question from Jacques Olmo.
As a Deep Cut resident, I have noticed there seems to be little progress with the Myndenhurst development. Are Skanska on schedule to complete all the houses on time? And are regular health and safety checks being carried out on the site, as former MOD land elsewhere in the country has been found to have issues with contamination such as asbestos and lead? Has any contamination been found on the Deep Cut site?
I'm advised that the chairman of the Planning Application Committee will respond to this question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm surprised that Mr. Olmo has asked this question, bearing in mind 2 of his fellow Liberal Democrats are on the Planning Applications Committee. And unfortunately, it's a shame that he, for the second time, hasn't been able to make the council to ask his question. However, I am very grateful that he has asked that question, because it enables me to update council and people watching of just the progress that has been made, largely thanks to the sterling efforts of the Surrey Heath planning team. The Deep Cut development slowed down due to the problem as it was linked to the MOD contract, which delayed decanting troops from the site. This is now being resolved, and Skanska are working to fully dispose of the site for development over the next 2 to 3 years, and continuing to forward deliver on the site infrastructure. They are not building any of the houses. Health and safety on site is not a matter for the Borough Council to oversee. It is the responsibility of the contractors and the Health and Safety Executive. In respect of land contamination, this is an MOD site, and as with many others, there is contamination. Much of this is asbestos in the form of asbestos cement, which is inert, provided it is not crushed, glass fragments and hydrocarbons from transport depots. This is being remedied on site wherever possible, so there is no risk to the surrounding areas. There is ongoing dialogue with Skanska and the Council's Environment, Health, Planning and Green Space Services and regular site visits. The information on contamination is published on the Council's website under Planning Application. I'm going to check this one, number 12/0546, and the subsequent permissions for details relating to condition 55 of the consent I read out. The development that has taken place, and I say Skanska are not building any houses, but the development that has taken place is for residential. There are 215 dwellings on phase 2B being built by Carla Homes. They are on site and building, and a large number of the completed dwellings are occupied. There's also 127 dwellings on phase 2A being built by Vistry Homes, which is Bovis. When you go on site, you'll see the sign. They're on site and undertaking preparation works to commence building in the new year. 21 dwellings on the most recent consent granted on phase 4A being built by Trivelos or something like that. I'll get it wrong. They're on site and have commenced development. In respect of non-residential, the infrastructure Spine Road, Central Sang, Village Green by Skanska, largely completed with further works under consideration. The primary school and nursery, of which the first phase by Skanska has been completed. The public house for Hall and Woodhouse, to be known as the Frog, works envisaged to start on site in the new year. The Garrison Church to St Barbara has listed building consent for alterations and repairs. I'm feeling they might have started on there, but I'm not 100% certain. Madam Mayor, can I just finally take this opportunity to thank the planning team at Surrey Heath for the tremendous work they've undertaken to get the development to this stage. And I'd also like to thank the members of the Planning Applications Committee for we've had some challenging applications this year, and they've dealt with them in a very professional, workmanlike manner. And we do miss you off the committee, Madam Mayor. We struggle on without you. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. As he was unable to attend this meeting, Mr Almo was given the opportunity to submit a supplementary question in advance. I have been advised that no supplementary question has been received. Question 5. Mr Ashbury, would you like to read out your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last month, I asked a question of the council regarding support for businesses on Frimley High Street, and I thank you for your reply. As I was unable to attend last month's meeting, I was unable to ask a supplementary question based upon the reply, so would like to ask one now. In your reply to me, you stated that discussions around the road infrastructure continue with Surrey County Highways, ensuring that issues arising in this area continue to be discussed and solutions sought. Could you please let me know what road infrastructure projects are currently under discussion, as at times it appears that Frimley High Street is little more than a rat run for traffic heading for the Blackwater Valley Road. I'm aware that this is a joint responsibility with Surrey County Council, but I believe that getting the infrastructure right is vital to business development in Frimley.
I'm advised that the Business and Transformation Portfolio Holder will respond to this question.
Caught by double mute, but I like double mute, as many of you will remember why. Mr. Ashbury, thank you for your question. So a straight answer, the main project that we're working on isn't in essence a road infrastructure project. It's a transport project. It's a thing called the Blackwater Valley Gold Grid Project. It's the research into the project is funded by the LEP. Funding is going to be a theme of my response. It's basically, though, looking at bus routes around Surrey Heath in and out of Camberley, in and out of Frimley High Street. Unfortunately, though, whilst the project has been funded, they've not brought forward a project to roll out on the ground. The Frimley High Street and the areas around Frimley, not least Frimley Park Hospital, are a priority area for Surrey Heath Borough Council. And we try and promote that continuously, not only with Surrey County Council, but also with the LEP, or the Local Enterprise Project. They're important because they are a quite significant funding source. In truth, the area is not deemed to be a priority either for Surrey County Council or for the LEP. It is, however, for this council. And we are working on a project which we would propose to put SIL funding into, to look at the roads and the public realm around Frimley High Street and the wider area. The idea being that if we provide funding, it acts as a lever to get other funding from other funding sources. As I say, we do take the Frimley High Street as a significant project. This will be the next major road infrastructure project that Surrey Heath Borough Council will try and bring forward. We will do that in conjunction with the Frimley Business Association. It's gone a bit quiet of late, but Councillor Sarah Jane Croke is planning to relaunch and revitalise that. She will be supported by the economic development officers from Surrey Heath, who in fact were instrumental in setting it up in the first place. A bit of a health warning nonetheless on that, because that all sounds like it's current, and it is current. Road projects take years. So it's one of these don't hold your breath, but we are on it. We understand the small p politics of how you work with these organisations to leverage funding out. And as a final comment, there is Surrey County Council are about to launch a consultation project, and I'm going to forget the name. So if you excuse me for a second, I'm going to look it up because it's in an email. There it is there. Right, the Surrey County Council Local Transport Plan 4. Now we believe that consultation will come out in the new year. It's a public consultation, and we would encourage the public to. We are going to try and get them to prioritise Frimley High Street, but if they don't, I would encourage you and other members of the public who are interested in bringing the standard of Frimley High Street up to respond to the consultation with that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Mr. Ashbury, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Just the question that I have is, that's great that there is going to be a consultation. Could I ask whether there is any concrete timing for when that consultation is likely to start and when residents can be able to submit their views?
No. No, but I believe it will be early next year. I don't know whether Mrs. Rickard is on this call and has a closer time. I doubt she does, but she might be able to confirm it is early next year.
I am here. I literally only seen the timetable for that work this morning. They will be coming out to talk to the council as a stakeholder in the early part of next year. They will go out to public consultation in the middle of next year, and they want to adopt by the end of next year. So it sounds a bit like a blink and you'll miss it consultation, but we will be taking things to the executive to consult on. And I know through things like our local plan working group, we will be consulting our councillors. So we will do our best to make sure that the public are aware of what is going on, but please be assured that through working through your local councillors, we will make sure that local views are represented.
So as a minimum, Mr. Ashby, that will absolutely go across the desk of Councillor Croke, who I'm sure then will take it from the Business Association, and hopefully their tentacles will reach out into the people of Frimley. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Thank you, Mrs. Rickard, and thank you, Mr. Ashbury. Agenda item 7. I am advised that no questions have been received from councillors. Moving on to agenda item 8, executive committees and other bodies. Can I have a proposal for the executive minutes and the recommendation at minute 53/E, 70/E, 71/E and 75/E as set out on the agenda paper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the minutes and recommendations of the executive on 20th of October, 17th of November and 9th of December 2020 be received and the recommendations approved.
Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, you do. I'll be delighted to second those minutes and recommendations.
Mr. Passion would like to.
Madam Mayor, on agenda item 75E, the recommendation at little 3, I believe, Leader, was amended to say that there would be a review of the hardship policy.
The leader like to come back?
Certainly, Madam Mayor. Sorry, perhaps I should have been clearer. I guess the minutes in front of the members of the council still refer to the original draft. The executive passed the recommendation this evening before this council meeting, but Mr. Passion is correct. We agreed that the item 3, the hardship policy, would be reviewed. That is an action on me to take forward with the group leaders and the executive, and we will have that done before the deadline of, believe it's January that we have to have the tax base confirmed. So I'm recommending it on the basis that small item 3 of that action is still open for review.
Do you have a seconder?
He still has a seconder, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Are you happy to receive these minutes and to agree the recommendations?
Objection.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm objecting to the acceptance of the recommendations of under minute 53.E, and I would like to call for a recorded vote on this item. Madam Mayor, I believe that as recommended, the recommendation is against the spirit of SIL money, how SIL money is used. Normally, as my understanding, SIL funds are used to fill gaps within local communities, not for capital program spends, and therefore I believe that the recommendation to use SIL funds to provide ducting for future CCTV and IT internet upgrades in Camberley Town Centre should be covered by the capital program spend rather than SIL funds. As I said, SIL money is often used to fill in gaps from by local communities such as parks, etc. And I just want to refer back to a comment from the leader of the council earlier, where he said that the local community, that the SIL funds had been turned into a local community fund for community groups to apply to. And I think, is this really fitting in with that definition of how SIL funds are to be used? If we are now proposing that we are now using SIL funds as a slush fund for capital program spends. So I would recommend that this recommendation is voted against, or that if the leader of the council would be willing to accept an amendment to change this from SIL funds to the capital program spend. Thank you.
Councillor McLafferty.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. There's a couple of things you said there in terms of implication that we were using it as a slush fund, etc. I don't think that's correct. This was allocated from the SIL, as you say, Community Infrastructure Levy. I think what's happened is that infrastructure has moved on from what we would traditionally regard as runoff ditches, roads, making corners, putting on traffic lights, etc., to help with that kind of thing. That's traditionally what it's been for. And I personally was very pleased to see a large sum of money, because 150,000 is a lot of money, that going into what is definitely community infrastructure. It was also pleasing that in actual fact that money came from the town ward and is being used in the town ward, and was signed off by the 2 ward councillors as a good use of the funds. I don't think it's for me to accept an amendment and change that. I think that decision was taken correctly, and I would stand by the decision.
Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, there's a couple of points that I would like to raise here. an amount of £150,000 has been assigned to this particular initiative. I try as I may, I couldn't find the list of the residual SIL monies that were contributed from the various different wards to this now general pot for Surrey Heath. But, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, I seem to remember that £50,000 is a lot more than was allocated from Town Ward. I believe it was quite a bit less than that. So it does appear that SIL money is going to be acquired from other wards, if my memory serves me correctly, to fulfil this function. It does say that the intention of this particular project is to provide internet cabling and provide for new CCTV. Well, CCTV basically is for the benefit of the police and not necessarily for the community. But you may say that it is intended to improve the safety of the community, but it's not for the purposes of the community. Secondly, internet cabling is the borough now going to become an internet provider? I seem to remember when this issue was raised several months ago, when the renovation of the High Street and the town centre was being discussed, and the work that was being carried out to lay new pavements and new roads, that the issue of providing cabling, ducting as part of this exercise was then discussed, and I was told in no uncertain terms that there was little point in doing this because internet providers could not be forced to use the ducting that had been provided by the council, and that they were perfectly at liberty to come along if they wanted to install internet cabling and dig it all up again at their own expense, obviously. But with all of the mess and the disturbance that that causes, and that there was no way that the council could force them not to do that because they had that right by law. So this does seem to go not only against the advice that had already been given for the reason for doing this, but I fail to see that internet cabling in the town centre is actually a community provision. This is perhaps something to do with businesses, maybe it's a service to business, but not to the community in general. So I have to support Councillor Rice's objection to this here, and I will be voting along with him against this. Thank you.
Councillor Mel Vagonham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also going to object to this because we have had this long conversation when this was brought up last time about internet cabling and ducting, etc., etc. We had a lengthy conversation. I'm not going to rehearse that all over again. My problem here is it says very clearly the current public REM project. Public REM means we all know it's the regeneration of the town centre, for which I'm sure the council has a budget. I'm sure it's planned within that budget. I do not know why we should take the SIL money. That SIL money, if it's not used here, like Councillor McLafty said, it can be used somewhere else because there are boroughs within, the wards within this borough, which doesn't have any SIL money. And I actually echo what Councillor Tapper said. We don't know how much money the town board has in terms of SIL money to use here. And if not, if they don't have adequate amount, are we taking it from some other SIL money, which means other wards are going to suffer. So I really genuinely do object it on that principle alone, and also the fact that there must be a budget for REM works within the entire town centre regeneration plan. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, Councillor McLafferty, you wish to come back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did see Councillor Perry's hand go up there, but I'd just like to put Councillor Mal Vagonham and Councillor Tapper's mind at rest. My understanding is that the town ward had significantly more than £150,000 SIL money and has been looking for ways of using that SIL money. within the town. Obviously, they don't have play parks and all the rest of it. What they do have is the town centre. I'm sorry, Councillor Tapp, I'm at a loss to understand how CCTV is not for the benefit of our residents. Okay, the police, even if indirectly, the police are there for the benefit of our residents. If we give them a tool which helps it helps our residents. But I think more straightforwardly, I think CCTV is there for the benefit of our residents. This is absolutely legitimate, in my view. It's legitimate community infrastructure. I think it is a case of that. But just in terms of your main concern, Councillor Malvaginam, I know was, are we taking money from other wards? And the answer, I believe, is categorically no. I think the other thing is that the reason that we took the decision to restructure SIL is that, frankly, it's been building up for years. I think I'll ask Mrs. Rickard to, if she can, just mention the number. But it's a significant number, and that budget is there. We as a council want that money to go to other wards. And you're quite right, Sashi, Councillor Malvaginam. There are wards, I think I always use the same example, Old Dean, that does take, in terms of, it has a need for SIL money to be spent in that, but it actually doesn't take a huge amount of development, right, for various reasons. So I think this is a legitimate use. I honestly think this is a legitimate use. I don't think there's any kind of sleight of hand, if there's any, nobody's implicating that, but I think just this is town ward infrastructure money being used for town ward infrastructure. You're absolutely right that it will benefit everyone who comes into the town, not just the residents of the town. But that's the same if we get a play park or a corner. It doesn't say it can only be used by the residents in that ward. So I think I just wanted to put your mind at rest. I'm sorry I cut across Councillor Perry there.
Well, it was Councillor Bates, I believe, and then Councillor Perry.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite an interesting point that's being made here, and I wasn't aware this was going to come up tonight. So I've gone back to the original paper. This is the second time tonight I've done this. So this is the meeting of the executive on the 5th of October. And I suppose my point on this is, firstly, according to the summary of that report, which I appreciate members won't have in front of them, or possibly there may be some members, it also includes 5G in the town centre. So it's not just about CCTV in the town, so it is covering 5G in the town centre. And I think the key point for me is regarding whether this is the SIL fund that the town ward members are the ones who in essence have the projects for. And now, if it is the case, and Councillor Perry obviously wants to speak, and I'd be interested to know the views of Councillor Brooks if he was willing to give them. If it is the view of those members that this is a project that should be supported as part of the SIL fund for their ward, then I personally would not have a problem with that. In the same way that if somebody came to Old Dean, and we've highlighted there is a problem at the moment, although we've just changed it, about lack of SIL funds in Old Dean, and somebody was to come to me and Councillor Garrett and suggest that that wasn't really an appropriate use of funds, I suspect that probably Sean and I would not give, will give fairly short shrift to it. But so I would be interested to know and just have confirmation from the town members. If they are happy and if it comes from the town fund, then I personally am comfortable with it. But as I say, I would like that reassurance, please.
Councillor Perry.
Turn my mute off. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would confirm that we are supportive of this motion. When the thing came up for discussion, we were told that the budget for the town centre and High Street renovation was not sufficient to facilitate this extra ducting, which would enable the easy introduction of 5G and more advanced internet connections in the future. And we believe that that will give the town centre an extra edge, which would be very much in the interests of our constituents who live in and work in that area. So we're trying to use our money to give the town centre an extra edge, which would hopefully boost employment and make the town more attractive generally. So that's why we supported the motion, and still do. So we think it is a worthwhile project and it will benefit our constituents. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks, did you want to come in? Then Councillor Malvaganam and then Councillor Allaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I did put my hand up some time ago, but was unfortunately missed again. Anyway, yes, this is one thing that myself and Councillor Perry wholeheartedly agree on. We have to make our town centre special. We have to make it different. And when there was a request for the ducting to be done, and it's the ducting that's being paid for, the point is that that enables other things to be done without digging up the whole of the high street again. And it's very important that we can have this in place, ready to take that if we have 5G, if we have other things that are running through that ducting. And we have got approaching, I believe, £250,000 in our cell fund in the town ward. It's not surprising with the amount of development that we've taken in town ward. There are other wards that don't take any development and therefore they don't get the SIL money. So it's absolutely right and proper that we should be using this fund to help all of our residents and all those people that benefit from the town centre and also benefit from trying to make our town centre special and different to attract more people and to making it a exciting place for everybody. It's well spent. I quite agree with the spend. And I'm amazed that there's been questioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Malvaganam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually quite surprised by what Councillor Perry just said. He said we are short of funds on the capital. I would have thought this would have been brought to the attention of the council a long time ago when we are actually on a massive reorganization, regeneration of the town centre. This is entirely new to us, new to me anyway. If it's not new to the leader, I'd like to hear that he doesn't know about it, that this is just putting something in to cover up a shortfall. And also just to give the leader an assurance, I don't think any of us so far from our group has ever mentioned or even thought of this as some sort of sleight of hand. That's not the intention here at all. Intention is absolutely honorable in terms of saying that this SIL money is there for the communities, and the community which doesn't have, although you mentioned Oldin, I can tell you the ward I represent, Frimley Green, does not have any SIL money. I've been asking for SIL money since I've joined to be allocated, and which now the leader has agreed to actually spread it around. I don't see why this money should be used. It should be spread around to the other wards. And going back to Councillor Brooks' statement, again, I'm shocked because this is what Mr. Councillor Tapper brought up earlier to you, leader, saying that this duct was actually discussed at length. And we were told, I was there at the meeting as well, we were told categorically, if we put this duct in, they could come and dig it up again. Now I'm hearing another story from Councillor Brooks saying that this is for everyone to use. So where are we? Could you give us some clarification? We are all over the place from 3 different people and what we hear at a public meeting. Thank you, leader.
Can I let Councillor Clafferty and then Councillor Allaway?
Yeah, I'm not. It's funny, we often don't all hear exactly the same thing. Councillor Perry said that there wasn't money in the budget to put ducting in under the High Street in the original budget. That's different to whether the programme is run over budget or not. Okay, and what he said was there wasn't the money in the budget to put ducting in. And 5G doesn't necessarily mean to say it has to be our 5G project that we're discussing right now. 5G is going to be a matter of fact, just like 4G. And it makes sense that while we were digging up the town centre, we put the ducting in. I think the fact that, I guess it's true, I'm not aware of that comment, but I guess it's true that anybody can come along, any BT Open or whoever can come along and dig up the High Street and not use our ducting. But if we don't put the ducting in, they all definitely will dig up the high street and put their ducting in. If we provide ducting, then the obvious choice for them, and I imagine it would be a lot lower cost, and that's what drives them, is to just use the ducting that's already there. So by not putting it in, we absolutely guarantee the high street gets dug up. If we do put it in, there's a possibility the high street gets dug up. So I think that's fine. And your last point there about the money going around, you know, Sashi, I agree. I was absolutely behind the idea that we take SIL money and start to use it across the borough, right? But even in the scheme that we have come up with now, the new restructuring of SIL, the ward that actually generated the money, i.e. took the pain of the development, they get first call on their SIL money. Okay, you cannot say to Town or Old Dean or St Michael's or Frimley, right, you're not allowed to spend that £5,000, it must go into a pot and people bid for it. It's only if a ward doesn't have ongoing projects or it has a demand for it, right? And that, although that sounds crazy because you think, oh, everybody can spend money. I say again, this money has been sat in the bank for a long, long time, not being spent. Okay, and this is not the ward councillor's fault. This is one where, in particular, the town, Mr. Councillor Brooks and Councillor Perry have been looking for ways to spend SIL money in their ward, and they take a gigantic amount of development, and they're looking for it. And as both have just said, I agree with Councillor Bates. The both ward councillors have said this is a good use of their SIL money. That it should be. That's it. But just to take your point, it's 5G. It's a good use of SIL money, and it is not a case of, I don't believe other wards are going to go short. My recollection is that SIL money is sitting at somewhere between 700 and 900,000 pounds, and then we take 150,000 off of that. There's still a significant amount of money for community projects still to happen, and of course it's a fund that gets replenished as we take more development.
Councillor Alloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think everyone knows my views on SIL, and I'm not going to beat that drum to death tonight. But just to say, I thought the purpose of deciding how you spend SIL money was consultation with the residents to find out what they want money spent on.
Spoke of Councillor Rice. Is it? Is nobody else?
No, anyone else speak? No one else to speak. Councillor Taps always spoke. Should we speak again?
No, nor should Councillor Rice.
Well, he asked. He's put it forward.
So he can speak. Sorry, it's because we can't see all your lovely faces from this chair, so I'm sorry about that. Right, everybody has had the opportunity to speak once. Councillor Mize has opposed this, and we'll need 3 people to support him and have a roll call vote. So have you 3 people who will agree to Councillor Malvaganam? Councillor Tapper. Okay. And Councillor Galliford. So this will be with Mr. Payne will call out your names.
So just to confirm, members, this is whether you are for or against the recommendation that's before you in the paper in respect to the £150,000. Councillor Dan Adams.
For.
Councillor Graham Alloway.
Against.
Councillor Peter Barnett.
Against.
Councillor Rodney Bates.
For.
Councillor Cliff Betton.
Against.
Councillor Richard Brooks.
For.
Councillor Sarah Jane Croke.
For.
Councillor Vivian Chapman.
For.
Councillor Paul Deach.
For.
Councillor Colin Dugan.
For.
Councillor Tim Fitzgerald.
Against.
Councillor Sharon Galliford.
Against.
Councillor Sean Garrett.
For.
Councillor Edward Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Josephine Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Rebecca Jennings Evans.
Looks like she's frozen.
Okay. For, I can see your thumb up there, Councillor Jennings Evans. Councillor David Lewis.
For.
Councillor David Mansfield.
For.
Councillor Alan McClafferty.
For.
Councillor Emma McGrath.
For.
Councillor Charlotte Morley.
For.
Councillor Sashi Malvaganam.
Against.
Councillor Adrian Page.
For.
Councillor Robin Perry.
For.
Councillor Darrell Ratteram.
For.
Councillor Morgan Rise.
Against.
Councillor John Skipper.
Against.
Councillor Graham Tapper.
Against.
Councillor Pat Tedder.
For.
Councillor Victoria Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Helen Whitcroft. Sorry. I think maybe Councillor Whitcroft has been having trouble with her internet. Councillor Valerie White.
For.
Councillor Christian Wren.
Against.
Councillor Whitcroft. Against. As said, against in the chat, I think, members.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The vote was 22 for and 11 against. No abstentions. Thank you. So is that agreed, members, as per the recommendations? Yeah. Thank you. Can I have a proposer for the planning application committee minutes?
In the absence of Edward, I don't know if he's there or not. I'm happy to propose the minutes of the planning applications meeting. If somebody else who was there could second them, please.
In absence of the chair, I'm happy to second those minutes.
Yeah, I've
Thank
just
you.
gone down. Can you say I've just gone down? I'm coming back on. Yeah, I hear them.
Are you happy to second them, Councillor Hawkins?
Yeah, sorry, I've got no picture here, but thank you, councillors, for doing that, and I'll try and get picture back. Thank you.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Thank you. Can I have a proposal for the Employment Committee minutes of the 8th of October 2020?
I'd like to propose the acceptance of those minutes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Galliford. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes and agree the recommendations? Thank you. Can I have a proposal for the Licensing Committee minutes, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose the minutes of the Licensing Committee held on the 21st of October 2020. And hopefully Councillor Chapman will second.
I'm pleased to second those minutes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Yeah. Members, I have been advised that the Audit and Standards Committee minutes for the 23rd of November 2020 are still being drafted. Can I have a proposal for the notes of the joint staff consultative groups?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose acceptance of the joint
Thank you.
staff.
Do you have a seconder?
I'd like to second those minutes unless someone else is.
Yeah, I'm happy to second those.
Well, I think
You've got them double seconded then.
double seconded. Have you received these notes, members? Thank you. Agenda item 9. Before we go on to agenda 9, we will have a 5-minute break and back at 20 past, please. Thank you. What's anything so simple?
The chamber mic's still on.
you got the is the council offices still virtually closed down?
Well, we've got a shadow.
Yeah.
Probably about 30 odd people.
We can
Madam
hear
Mayor,
you.
you're
I was going
live,
to say,
Madam
Chairman,
Mayor.
just be aware you're no longer muted.
Yeah, right.
Get members back.
I was quite enjoying the conversation. Please do carry on.
Liked your card, Madam Mayor. I thought it was a very lovely picture. You must be very proud.
Right.
Sorry about losing picture, Madam Mayor. I moved it, but I'm glad the internal intercom worked from across the house.
It's nice to see you back, isn't it? I think we're all back. So, agenda item 9. I'd like to invite the leader to introduce the report of the Governance Working Group and to move the recommendations therein.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the council is being asked to consider the recommendations of the Governance Working Group. The Governance Working Group was really covering 3 areas. It's a long paper, but what I can direct you to is that the first one is clause 2.2 on public questions. The Governance Working Group unanimously agreed that we are in pursuit of openness and accessibility. And so we wanted to make some changes that would assist with that when it came to public questions. The first thing was that we're recommending that the Constitution says it's 15 minutes allocated to public questions, and we'd like to make that 30 minutes. We do think, however, that the questions should be more on topic, and what we mean by that is more directed towards the borough council's responsibility rather than what can obviously be county. The questions that have been coming in, and I've been gratified to see that we have been getting a lot more questions, and that's good, although only 5 this time. There were 9 last time. But some of the questions were clearly statements, and it was almost like somebody was standing for office. So what we have recommended is that the questions be limited to a maximum of 125 words. You'll see that of the 5 questions that were asked this evening, all of them were well under the 125. So it's not a limiting number, but we have had some that are 200 plus. And the point of that is not to limit the question, but to allow more questions to be done inside the 30 minutes. And finally, the questions will all be published by 2 p.m. on the day of the council meeting. The next recommendation is number 3. This is about delegated decision making. I, as leader, have stated that I will make collective decisions with the executive in this chamber. However, if the leader, me or a future leader, makes a decision that's been delegated to them, then we're recommending that that advice that they're given in making that decision is recorded and available to be published as required. This is a consequence of the Brown-Jacobson report to do with Mrs. Wheeler. As is item 4, we want to clarify that the chief exec does not have the singular authority, delegated authority to release security on land, as Ms. Wheeler has done. And that now is being recommended that it's in conjunction with the 151 officer, an executive member, or a relevant committee chair. And finally, on number 5, we are recommending that we insert into the scheme of delegation the Town and Police Act of 1847. We think it's about time that we put it into our scheme of delegation, as is the Local Government Act of 1976. I think we've considered these long enough, and they've passed muster, and it's time they were in. In actual fact, they've been left out by mistake, and we're correcting that mistake. We looked at this, the officers looked at this because of coronavirus, and we want to add in the scheme of delegation, the tasks required for coronavirus, and we've made it for any future pandemics. So I recommend these to the chamber.
Thank you, Leader. Do you have a seconder?
I do.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Do you have any comments, members? Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to be quick and join the council leader in supporting these motions. And just a note on the inclusion of the Town and Police Clauses Act. If we took 173 years to review every piece of legislation, I think we would be very, very, very slow. But that I say that as a glib remark. Just regarding the questions, I would I'm pleased that this has come forward, and I was at the meeting of the governance working group where we made the decision. It was a cross-party and very collaborative discussion on how we ensure that the questions being made to the council are the right, not necessarily the right questions, but we are ensuring that we're getting to the heart of the issues. And I think with the proposed changes that we are actually opening up the system of questions to council, we're making it much clearer the guidance for members of the public on how to ask questions and what their questions should be focused on. So I'm very pleased to support this motion.
Thank you. Is that agreed then, members? Yeah. I'd like to invite Councillor Josephine Hawkins to introduce the report on food poverty in Surrey Heath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At our last full council meeting on the 4th of November, we agreed following a discussion to introduce a fund specifically for local organisations to apply for funding to provide meals to children who receive free school meals specifically during the school holiday period. At this time, our government refused to provide any additional funds to cover these costs. However, on the 9th of November, this decision was reversed and the government has now agreed to provide the necessary funds to retain the provision of either school meals or vouchers for those who qualify until Christmas 21. As previously mentioned, Surrey County Council have a scheme in place for issuing vouchers to families who need this ready and in time for Christmas. The aim of this agenda item is to change our agreement by revising the food poverty scheme, which will not duplicate the government funding, but will be open to accept applications from registered groups working to help meet the broader local food poverty need. This is vital work and crucial that the council are able to help facilitate support to meet this need. The initial allocation utilises £20,000 from the Council Community Fund grant scheme, and this will be reviewed by the executive at its meeting in February 21. I genuinely hope that we can all come together and agree this is good news for Surrey Heath by supporting this tonight, as the scheme is ready to be introduced tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I'd like to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Croak. Do you have any comments, members? Councillor Galliford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to question why the sum of £20,000 has been decided upon.
It was a number that was looked at. We did look at various options, and if we need more than £20,000, then we'll look at that and that. But we need a starting point, and £20,000 seemed quite a reasonable amount of sum to start with.
Under the circumstances, and following your answer, thank you, Councillor Hawkins, then would it not be advisable to raise that sum at this present moment in time, rather than having to keep coming back?
I don't think so. We have had various officers have had discussions. We've spoken to various charities about what they are needing and the support we are giving. and this was a decision that was taken that at the moment £20,000 is sufficient. But if we do need it, then I'm sure there'll not be a problem in coming back to the council.
Councillor Wren.
Well, can I first say how glad I am the government has done another U-turn. I'm honestly surprised they've not got sprained necks from the amount of U-turns they've done this year, but it's been quite impressive. Feel free to check in with our MP. I hope he's okay. He hasn't got a sore neck, maybe needs some deep heat. So with that in mind, I think a lot about the charities that we've spoken to recently in the External Partnership Committee. One of the biggest concerns they have is resources. And so I think by extension, some of this should look at what resources charities may need. And I think that's something that hasn't been incorporated. And so I'd be interested to see if there's any comments on that.
I can assure you that Officer Jane Boytott is in daily communication with the various charities, with the Hope Hub, who do a tremendous amount for the council, with the Citizens Advice, with all the charities. She is on a almost a daily basis. I think she's chatting to them to see what they need, what resources they need. I think not everyone is aware of the amount of work she actually does, but she has definitely got her finger on the pulse, and she knows. I think if there was any issues, she would say, this is what we need to be doing, and we would take advice from her, because, as I say, she is the expert. She is in daily contact with all the organisations, and they do know that if something is needed, that they can go to her, and that as a senior officer in the council, that she will work with members, and that we get help to people that actually need it. It's not sort of a scattergun approach and sort of here is everything for everybody, but she knows who needs help, and so that we can get the right resources, the right amount of money to where the help is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I can't see any other hands. Is that agreed, Mem? Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a very quick question for the portfolio holder. It's just what ways are we intending to market this fund to the local charities? Because while I have first-hand knowledge of how great Jane is, and I appreciate and I accept that the work that she does is very, very important, but how do we go beyond the charities which we know exist, and how do we approach the charities that may be much smaller, or maybe such as very small community groups that may want to apply for this, but they don't know that this fund is going to exist? I was just wondering if you could update us on the strategy for marketing this fund.
I think this will be put on the council's front page of the website. I believe one of the other councillors mentioned that we need to get things like the poverty groups, the various fundings that we need to be, those need to be on the front page of our comms, and that so people who need help will get the help. We do have a poverty working group meeting, which one of those will be on tomorrow, and we are talking of having banners so that people who need help, there will be banners putting out, and I also think that councillors, I mean, we're all there to help. We all surely should be working together for something like this, and I think that we ourselves should be promoting it, and that, whether it's through schools or voluntary organisations, we all should be working together on this, pulled together as a team. And any residents or somebody who needs help, but the sooner we can get this done, the scheme is ready to be launched, we can get on with it, and if more money is needed, then we will review that. I don't think that will be a problem, but at the moment we have to have a starting point, and I think £20,000 is a reasonable amount to start with. Thank you.
Councillor Malvagnam and then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From what I've just heard from Councillor Mrs. Hawkins is that you're not very clear as to how you're going to advertise. Even if you were clear, can you tell me, or with the cost of that, would it actually come off this £20,000? The £20,000 actually causes me personally a big issue, because this is the same figure, funnily enough, we had last time when we actually did the food free meals for the kids. I mean, we put out a motion last time. I don't want to go into history. That was chopped and changed. And the part that was left was about Marcus Rashford. If not for Marcus Rashford, this 20,000 wouldn't have even appeared here. It would have gone into some sort of a black hole. Yeah. Now, what I would strongly suggest is for the portfolio holder to take it back to the exec and seriously consider whether we can afford to give more than £20,000, because I am of the strongest of opinions the coming year is going to be so hard on our residents because of the pandemic, because of other economic factors, which I shall not use a B word. It'll actually going to have a lot of unemployed people, a lot of kids who will go hungry again. I know the government has promised, it's not a lecture, I'm making a statement here. Government has promised to feed the kids till 2021. But we as a council have an absolute duty towards our residents and their children. I would strongly suggest you should take it back to the exec, examine the numbers and bring it back again. If that was the case, I would support it. If not, I will be voting against this one.
This has already been to the executive, and what we're doing, we're spreading it further. Can I ask Councillor Sean Garrett to come in, because he chairs the poverty working group, and he might be able to help with some of the figures on this.
He is about to come in, Councillor Hawkins, but there's two speakers before him, but he will be speaking.
Thank you.
So it's Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Bates, Councillor Garrett.
I was actually raising my hand to vote, not to ask a question.
Okay.
So not from me.
Okay, Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I have to say, I think the motion that got passed was clearly extremely successful, because the government weren't actually going to do anything on the 4th of November when we had our meeting. And then just 4 days after we had our council meeting and put this vote forward, the government clearly changed their minds. And I think what obviously happened is our MP saw the unanimous view of the council as was voted on at that motion, and clearly realised that the government intention at that time was not correct. And they rethought it, and credit to them for doing that, because we now have a situation where the funds have been given to Surrey County Council. So I think we should all take credit at Surrey Heath for doing that and making our MP aware of the strength of feeling and ensuring that children in our community are now fed. So whilst I appreciate there may have been some disputes at the time regarding the motion, the actual outcome, I think, has been very successful. And in terms of the ongoing situation, well, the £20,000 that we referred to was, as is indicated, was intended to be a last resort if the government didn't actually do anything. Well, they are. And what's happened since, and I'm pleased that this has happened, and I credit all involved for it, is to say, actually, we're not just going to take that money back. We are going to use it for local services. So as well as the children who will receive the vouchers over the holiday period, which I think we can all agree should have happened before, but it's now happening, that we actually are still going to keep that fund anyway. It's not going to be a last resort now. We're actually going to use it for the services of the local community, and there will be much use of that. I know there are projects lined up already that would be liking to do it. And I think there's 2 points I do want to pick up that I think Liberal Democrat members have raised, which I think are very good ones. Firstly, if there is a need of more than 20,000, I think it would be helpful if the leader could reassure us that if there was a clear need, and if officers were incorrect and members were incorrect, and there was as much of a need, and I think there's a shared concern regarding things like Brexit and how that might play out, that actually we can resolve very quickly. I'm sure he, from the leadership, will ensure that if there is a clear designated need and that there is an increased fund needing, that will come back. Secondly, I think there was a very good point made regarding marketing to smaller charities. It is true that a number of charities are already well linked in with this council and have been. So we saw that with Surrey Heath Prepared, through many of the community work as a named officer that people have mentioned already, and many councillors are as well. But I do agree that it could perhaps be slightly more formalised, and so I do take on board that point that was made earlier in order to make sure that we properly market that. And I think it will be helpful to explicitly do that with voluntary action North Surrey, with their voluntary groups, to make sure they're specifically aware for Surrey Heath. And I'm not sure if that's been covered, it may well have been, but just to make sure that those smaller groups are actually explicitly aware, because it is right. It's not just about money. It's about training. It's about DBS checks, volunteers, those sorts of things. It's not just the financial situation as well. So I agree with those points, but I think the key point is this, that the fundamental belief that we all unanimously agreed at the last meeting in the end is that we are addressing this need in the community, and we also want to go further, and I credit all involved for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, reference to £20,000, I'm sure I've read it in my notes at least twice, that the £20,000 that was discussed at the previous meeting was based on conversations with the local organisations that were involved in the free school meals during the Free School Meals Initiative. And they were approached and said, how much money do you need? And actually, most of them said, we don't need money, we need help, we need support. But we agreed we would give them £20,000. And at that time, I'm pretty sure the leader said, if more money is needed, we can supply it. Then, in the notes for this meeting, we've agreed, and we agreed it at the Poverty Working Group on Monday, that this £20,000 that had already been allocated, we will move it across, and it is now available because the Free School Meals Initiative has been done by the government, that we will move it across so it is still sitting there. And once again, I'm pretty sure the leader said, and I'm sure he will say it again tonight if he hasn't already, that if more than £20,000 is needed, the money will be made available. So that is where the £20,000 came from. It is the same figure because it is the same figure. And once again, it has been agreed that we will increase it above £20,000. Pretty sure that's been said again. So I think that covers off that. And I would like to request that this voting is a recorded vote. And I'm pretty sure I will have other members of the group that would also agree for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Councillor McClafferty, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly. Just from my memory, I think this 20,000 came about because first of all, there was a motion raised by, I believe it was Councillor Rise, to tackle free school meals, and Councillor Bates offered an amendment that Councillor Rise's motion had no money in it whatsoever. And Councillor Bates's amendment included putting £20,000 towards this, which I was very pleased to support. And I remember there was a lot of arguments against the amendment, but I was very pleased to see that in the end it was passed unanimously. And as Councillor Garrett has said, I think we as a council have made it absolutely clear that people who are in need are our top priority. But that doesn't mean to say that we just allocate just whatever sums we happen to feel. There has to be some logic to it. And the logic was, first of all, as Councillor Garrett said, we spoke to to charities who were involved in free school meals and food poverty, and we gauged that 20,000 was more than enough to cover them for the problems they had. Then we passed that, and I think it has been said we'll come back for more, and nobody wants to waste this chamber's time by coming back for more, but I believe that 20,000 is significant. And I think we've made this clear commitment. And my last point, just on marketing, one of the things that wasn't mentioned was there are actually very, very few charities in Surrey Heath that are directly to do with food poverty. I'm absolutely sure Mrs. Boytolt knows every single one of them, and we'll contact them directly and let them know that this was passed this evening and that money is now available for them rather than just tackling free school meals. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McClafferty. Are the two councillors that will support Councillor Garrett in his request for a recorded vote? Councillor Croke, Councillor Page.
Madam Mayor, I will as well. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Payne will now call out your names, and you'll.
Just to confirm, members, this is for the recommendation as in the agenda paper for this item number 5, recommendation point 5. So Councillor Dan Adams.
In favour.
Councillor Graham Allaway.
For.
Councillor Peter Barnett.
In favour.
Councillor Rodney Bates.
For.
Councillor Cliff Betton.
For.
Councillor Richard Brooks.
For.
Councillor Sarah Jane Croke.
In favour.
Councillor Vivian Chapman.
For.
Councillor Paul Deach.
For.
Councillor Colin Dugan.
For.
Councillor Tim Fitzgerald.
For.
Councillor Sharon Galliford.
In favour.
Councillor Sean Garrett.
In favour.
Councillor Edward Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Josephine Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Rebecca Jennings Evans. I'll come back. I think we're having a few problems. Councillor David Lewis.
For.
Councillor David Mansfield.
For.
Councillor Alan McClafferty.
For.
Councillor Emma McGrath.
For.
Councillor Charlotte Morley.
For.
Councillor Tashi Mulvaganam.
With the leader's assurance, for.
Councillor Adrian Page.
For.
Councillor Robin Perry.
For.
Councillor Daryl Rataram.
For.
Councillor Morgan Rise.
For.
Councillor John Skipper.
For.
Councillor Graham Tapper.
In favour.
Councillor Pat Tedder. Councillor Victoria Wheeler.
For.
Is Councillor Whitcroft with us? No.
No, she's had to go.
Sorry. Thank you for that. Councillor Valerie White.
For.
Councillor Christian Wren.
For.
And Councillor Rebecca Jennings Evans is in favour. Thumbs up. So that's unanimous, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So that is that's agreed, members. Item 11. Members, you will see the urgent action which was undertaken in accordance with the scheme of delegation of function to officers. Are you happy to note this action?
Madam Mayor, can I say a word on it before they accept the entire motion?
Councillor Mulvaganam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've read it. It's the right way to go. What I do see, the scrutiny here doesn't seem to be entirely to my liking, or as a performance of finance scrutiny chair's liking. It doesn't matter who the chair is. I think the councillor, the leader, the mayor, and the performance of finance scrutiny chair, whomever it may be, should also be included as a sort of in the consultation process, Madam Mayor.
This is because this is a function of the council. The constitution is quite clear that any urgent action is after consultation with the leader and mayor in relation to council functions. I guess if you're wanting it something extended, it's something that you might want to propose through the governance working group moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor. I was just going to say exactly the same thing. I'd be happy to see that come before the governance working group, Councillor Mulvaganam, and we can have a discussion there.
Thank you. Councillor Galliford.
Thank you. I mean, the form that has to be filled out obviously has to be signed by the leader and the mayor, but it's not obvious in this paper that they are actually involved in the decision as to what is urgent and what appropriate action needs to be taken. So I do think it needs to be rewritten slightly to make that more obvious to everybody, because the way it stands at the moment, it looks like it's just officers and no elected representatives are actually involved in that decision making, despite the fact that on the form they do have to sign it off.
Councillor McClafferty.
Just taking on board Councillor Galliford's points. First of all, again, happy to discuss that, the governance working group. And secondly, it is a decision for me. I get talked through exactly what the arguments for and against, and if I don't agree with them, I don't sign. So I'm very, very much involved in the decision making.
Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just noticed on the form that, and I can see what Councillor Mulvagnan is saying, that it does say dated as well as signed. So we may have had an email coming in, but we haven't actually got the date of when those agreements were actually given. And I know that might come across as pedantic, but this is actually quite an important form because it does mean that that there isn't any wider scrutiny of that. So I think the point that's being made is a fair one, that at the very least, appreciating that usually it would be done by signature, but can't at the moment for COVID. I think we should at least put the date of when the email was sent in, as well as the person who sent it in.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Any further comments? Are you happy to note this urgent action, members? Yeah. I'd now like to invite members to ask questions of the leader, Councillor Alan McClafferty, on issues relating to executive functions. Can I now have the first question from members? Councillor Mulvagnan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure Councillor McClafferty is looking forward to this particular session. So I will not disappoint him. Let me start off with a couple of things. Maybe I'll come back to it later on in the session as well. We have been talking about part documentation under part 2. This has been discussed many a time at the council level, at committee levels, but I don't seem to ever get an answer from anyone. We do not know, I repeat, we do not know what documents are there under part 2. And if I ask for a document which is under part 2, there seems to be a silence somewhere. And I don't get a prompt answer. Never a prompt answer. I'm so sorry, it sounds a bit personal from my point of view. This is my experience I'm sharing with you. So it is kind of personal, but on the whole, there seems to be a lack of transparency, put it that way, in terms when you ask a question, there doesn't seem to be an answer back. Secondly, I'll let you deal with that one first, because I got about two or three other points. If you can kindly deal with that, please, leader. Last time I asked you 5 questions, you waffled your way out.
I guess in trying to understand your question, if you're saying that you are requesting documents that have been only made available to councillors under exempt part 2, and you're asking for those documents to be sent to you. First of all, obviously, it's not my job to give you those documents, but I'm more than happy to say that I support every councillor getting the information that they legitimately require to do their job. If there's an issue, I would suggest you take it up with Mr. Passion. And if you want to bring that up at a group leaders meeting, when Mr. Passion is there and I'm there, then I'm more than happy to have that discussion and get to the bottom of it.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, could I?
You had another point, Councillor Mulvagnan.
I have a few, but just to supplement this question, the answer was, sorry, question was specifically about the documents which should be not under part 2, which should be released, because the documents I have seen have been released to me away from part 2 now, because it was I was given the excuse that it was part 2. Then it shouldn't have been under part 2. Then it's released. Yeah. So I've asked the question as to how many documents are there still under the so-called part 2, which should be released. That list. We don't know. We don't know how many my point is we do not know how many documents are still under Part 2, which should be released. I have asked this question many a time, so I need some clarification as to how many documents are still there under Part 2, which should not be under Part 2.
I think maybe perhaps I'd be better off giving you an answer if I called in the monitoring officer. Would you be in a position to give an answer to Councillor Malavagana?
So typically what happens with Part 2 papers is the consideration of whether they should be released or not is usually determined at the point that they're asked for. So if any member of the public or councillor wants to see Part 2 papers at any point in time, then we will look at it. We will look at those papers at that point and look at all the factors to determine whether it should still remain Part 2, whether the document can be released but with reductions, or whether the whole document can be released entirely because none of it is Part 2. But it's not generally my experience that the council that councils generally have an inventory, if you like, of all the Part 2 papers and proactively look at Part 2 papers from time to time to determine whether they should go through that process of releasing them or redacting them or making them available if nobody's actually requested them. But if that's something the council wants to do, to go through that process and regularly determine which Part 2 papers should be subject to redactions or not, or released entirely, then I guess we could have that discussion. But the general practice is that the consideration of release is only at the point that they're asked for.
Madam Mayor, just a supplementary again to that, is that I've asked for a documentation on a particular item, which I will not say what it is, because it could be classified as Part 2. Yes, I don't know whether it's still Part 2 or not. So someone should come back and say it's under Part 2, go to the monitoring officer. And taking the monitoring officer's point, yes, there should be an inventory. So we know that particular document is still in Part 2. So we can assess whether we can call upon it if we require it. Now I speak as a chair of Performance, Finance and Scrutiny chair. I should have a list. So I should be able to say, could we have that please? And why is it still under Part 2? Shouldn't that be released to the residents and to the councillors in public? This is what you, the leader, and I have spoken from day one you became the leader. We have to be a lot more transparent to our residents, and we want to be transparent. What I don't want to be doing is going through this loop to find out what's in Part 2 and almost writing emails every other day. I'm exaggerating the point quite often to get our document out.
It sounds to me, Councillor Mavaganam, that what Mr. Ramatal has just said is that it is not normal practice for a council to have an inventory of Part 2 documents, but it sounds like that's exactly what you want us to have. I honestly would suggest that, we've got, over almost 40 people on this meeting, and I genuinely believe that this is something that we should discuss offline. Perhaps with the monitoring officer and the chief exec, but there's, right now there's 37 people listening to this, wondering when they're going to be getting off the hook. So I think let's take this offline if we may, because you're not going to get a better answer out of me than that one.
Thank you for that, but I'm glad that 37 are listening because they want the answers. So I'm glad I'll be able to tell the residents this is what leader, monitoring officer, and the group leaders will come together and decide. Thank you.
Councillor McClafferty has given you his answer and has suggested a meeting outside this one, which I think is a generous offer. And do remember, members, has anybody else got a question for Councillor McClafferty with issues relating to executive functions? Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for all of that. To the leader, do you agree with me and concerned parents that the completion of the works on the existing table on the Upper Chobham Road by Ravenscote School to bring it up to a zebra crossing are essential for the safety of the children and parents. Can I ask that you and the Acting Chief Executive write to the Leader and Cabinet Member for Transport at Surrey County Council, along with the Chief Executive and Executive Director, Environment, Transport and Infrastructure, urging that the matter is given proper consideration and action taken. In the event that these works are not completed by the time of the next local area committee in February next year, a detailed programme will be debated in full. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Yeah, the Ravenscote school crossing has been going on for a long time, and I absolutely agree that it's been going on far too long. And I'm more than happy to write to all the list of people that you have listed there, and add as much weight as I possibly can. I would urge everyone else to do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Actually, it's a supplementary really to the question that's just been asked by Councillor Hawkins. And I wonder if we could extend that letter to ask the county to review the safety around our schools in the villages as well. So at the moment, there is a petition that is out in West End for the school there as a result of the increased traffic because of all the new development there. And there is a petition and very embryonic meetings with the county in relation to safety around the school in Chobham St Lawrence. And actually, if you look at the Surrey County Council website, there are a number of petitions that all seem to relate to road safety, particularly around schools. And in Windlesham, we have not a single crossing. We have no crossings at all. And I think that there probably will be a lot of councillors here. I can see all those hands up saying that they also have similar issues. And I think maybe that the time has come that as a borough, we ask the county to review road safety as a wider piece of work and potentially think about looking at ways to fund it, even if that's a question of joint funding, so that children are safe throughout the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Two things. To be honest, in terms of effectiveness, I think I would be happy to write a single item letter, as Councillor Hawkins has suggested there, but I'd also be happy to write a second letter urging exactly what you're saying, just because I think it would be more effective. Right? I think as well, you're absolutely right to talk about joint funding. I happen to know that Windlesham Parish Council has a fair amount of funds that it's available to put towards these kind of things if they're inclined to do so. I think the borough should play its part, but fundamentally, this is about government allocating enough money, isn't it? And the county making priorities. I believe, and I'm on thin ice here because I'm just working from memory, but I believe there is legislation going through which is specifically aimed at making the roads outside schools more safe in terms of that. But and I'd be happy to ask our MP, Mr. Gove, about that very thing and get his view on it. Okay.
Councillor Mansfield and then Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just really want to back up and fully support what Councillor Wheeler has just said, reference the villages. I'm ashamed, quite frankly, that I'm a Surrey County councillor and the situation we have in Benner Lane and the school and that what is lacking and just has not been done. And it's one of those situations that if we don't do something very quickly, there's going to be a serious accident there. And it's really sad when it comes down to the fact that people have got to do these petitions and things when clearly, it doesn't take somebody to come out of Sleepy Valley and look at the particular place itself and assess that something needs to be done. So I fully support what Councillor Wheeler has done, and I would ask and recommend that a second letter is sent. Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This will be very brief. It's just something that's come up this evening, and I'm going to turn it into a question for the leader because it's a point and I just need to make it. Leader, can you confirm that on page 59 of the recent performance and performance agenda item, Appendix 2, there are the full list of SIL figures, which Councillor Malvagalen was unable to find earlier. I believe he was struggling to try and find information. So I'm pretty sure that's what Councillor Malvagalen said. I could be wrong, but I'm just pointing out it's on page 59, Appendix 2. Thank you.
Right of reply, Madam Mayor. I must put my vice chair.
No,
Absolutely. No, right of reply, please, Mayor.
This is leader's question time, and you have asked the leader a question, and I believe Councillor Rise would like to ask the leader a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I was wondering if the Leader of the Council will direct officers to provide a consultation response to the recent Surrey County Council consultation on cutting £1 million from SEN funding. And with recent discussion, as even this evening, that we want to place a high priority on those in vulnerable positions, that the Leader of the Council will ensure that Surrey Heath Borough Council provides a clear consultation response to that consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. First of all, the good news is that I don't need to direct the officers to reply to consultations. I'm not aware of a single one that they've never replied to, but I'm more than happy to work with them. I'm more than happy to work with you on our reply. I agree, cutting funds from something as vital as SEN is just painful. You always want there to be other priorities, don't you? You know, the priority, but like us, we're going to be faced with very, very similar discussions in the new year. When we're setting the budget in the new year, we could definitely be faced with, are we going to be cutting services or doing something differently? And it's going to be painful. So, but, the short answer is, Morgan, yes, I'm very happy to make sure that we respond to that as positively as we possibly can.
Is there any other members who've got a question for Councillor McClafferty? Councillor Galliford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor McClafferty, I wonder if you could update us on what progress is being made in winding up the JPUT, please. It seems to have been somewhat delayed.
Sure, thank you. In actual fact, the delay has been in following the law and the rules. The officers recommended some time ago to the options to the Property Investment Working Group, and we unanimously said, let's bring it back on shore now that we can. I'm happy to open that up. I think either Mr. Hone would possibly give a better idea of when it's going to happen, but I know we were just looking at the formalities that involved us. Is Mr. Hone there?
I am. I'm not at the moment. I'm still not clear about when exactly it's going to happen, Leader.
Okay, but in terms of what we've been talking about at Property Investment Working Group, it was targeted as being early New Year.
That's right. Yeah, as I say, it certainly. Yeah, sorry, I should have said it.
So you don't have a date, but you do have a time period, which is early part of 21.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want.
Okay, and I agree, Councillor Galliford. We want to get it on shore as quickly as possible for no other reason than it saves us a lot of money.
Yeah, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor, I would say absolute end date 31st of March, but we would want to get it done a bit sooner than that. It just depends how quickly we can get the paperwork done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other members that wish to ask a question of the leader with regards to executive functions? Councillor Betham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask the leader if he's as pleased as I am to see Councillor Perry back with us?
Well, Councillor Perry is very strong-minded. He has a habit of, saying what he thinks. He's not adverse to pointing out when I'm wrong, which he seems to think on a lot of occasions, But overall, yes, I would agree with Councillor Betton that I'm very, very pleased to see Councillor Perry back on his feet and back in action.
Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of this council's declaration of a climate emergency at the full council meeting held in October 2019, please can I ask that some time is taken to investigate the possibility of bringing a short-term car sharing service, such as Zipcar, to the borough to encourage the reduction of car ownership and stimulate a greener, more environmentally friendly travel?
I love that idea. I know you mentioned Zipcar, but I think there's half a dozen or a dozen companies that provide very similar, even Enterprise does that. I think they're focused right now on very large cities, London, Oxford, Cambridge, Bristol. But I think it's the future. My understanding is that one shared car takes 13 other cars off the road. And if there's one thing we've learned is look at the air quality, how it's improved during COVID. So absolutely, I'd be very happy to incorporate that. And it should be something that perhaps both the local plan working group could be looking at, and of course our climate working group.
Thank you.
Councillor Croke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's really more of a statement, and I just wanted to congratulate really Councillor McClafferty and all councillors who are sat here tonight on pulling through and coming hopefully through the other side of COVID. And I just wanted to say, well done to all of us. I think we've all had to step up and we didn't ever expect that we'd be doing this. So I just wanted to say thank you all. And I do, think we've done a great job. So I think we do need to pat ourselves on the back, and well done, everybody.
And I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Sarah Jane Croke. Well done.
Yes, I agree as well that I think all councillors have had a very different year than one expects when they become a councillor, and I think we've all done very well in our wards. Right, move on to item 13. I move that under section 100A (4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the business set out in items 14 and 15 on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to second that.
Thank you. Is that agreed, members?